Lost Start with Andrew Cox podcast, Marine Corps League and Till Valhalla Project Ambassador. Now streaming on all major podcast platforms. Thanks for tuning in to the podcast that's given a voice to our veterans. The Lost Start with Andrew Cox. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Lost Start podcast. That podcast giving a voice to our veterans. I'm your host, Andrew Cox, and today we're having a veteran story. But before we get into the episode, are you enjoying the podcast? And make sure you go to the website. That's the loststart.podbean.com. Go check us out, see what we're all about. If there's any way you can help support us and get our veteran voices out for all to hear, it'd be much appreciated. Also, a big shout out to the Till Valhalla Project out there doing some amazing things. If you don't know anything about that organization, go to their website. It's tillvalhallaproject.com. And of course, for all you Marines out there, those FMF sailors out there, there's a place for you once you get out. That's right. It's called the Marine Corps League. So be sure and go check them out, join their ranks, and just have a heck of a time with the Marine Corps League. Are you a Marine veteran? Are you missing that bond you had on active duty? Then I have a place for you. Join the only congressionally chartered Marine Corps Veteran Service Organization, the Marine Corps League. Get that brother and sisterhood back in your life. Become one of the fewer, the prouder, a Marine Corps League member. All right, we're back here. I got my special guest. This is Jesse Culpepper, Marine veteran. Welcome to the program. I'm glad you're here. It should be a good time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Well, I guess let's jump into it. Where did you grow up? And then what was that like and what drew you into military service?
So I grew up in a little town called Tullahoma, Tennessee. My family actually landed there because my grandfather was in the Army Air Corps, which would later become the Air Force. He grew up an orphan in Phoenix, Alabama, and was into model airplanes when he was running a paper route through the Great Depression, and joined the Army Air Corps, went to Langley, Virginia, and then they had these new things called wind tunnels, and they have a giant, one of the largest air testing bases in Tullahoma, so that brought my family there. And that was pretty much the extent of my family's military background. I actually got drawn to the Marine Corps because of an old Clint Eastwood movie named Heartbreak Ridge.
Oh, what a great movie.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
Yeah, I actually had a T-shirt when I was 6 years old that said USMC Recon on it. And I always knew that's what I wanted to do from the time I was 6 years old. It just stuck. The Marine Corps was it for me.
That is awesome. Well, hey, there's nothing wrong with that, man. Heartbreak Ridge is a great movie. So, man, I love that movie. I watch it every time it's on TV and it flashes up. Yeah. It's one of those automatics. You know?
But by the time I was 12, my dad was like, I think you're old enough, and put on a Full Metal Jacket. He was like, you still want to join the Marine Corps? I was like, that just made it worse. Still want to join.
Absolutely. I love it. All right. So now, did you join right out of high school?
I did.
Okay.
I originally had an appointment to the Naval Academy, had my congressional letter of recommendation and my application in to go to the Naval Academy, and already spoke with the Marine Corps liaison up there to see how to go the Marine Corps pathway.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that summer between my junior and senior year, right before that, my dad actually passed away in a car wreck, and my mother had been deceased since 2000 from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. So it was kind of just me and my 97-year-old grandmother.
Yeah.
And I was taking care of her and putting myself through school, and I kind of just wanted to be on the next bus out of town. So I enlisted instead. Figured I'd end up going the Mustang route eventually.
Right. Yeah. That's tough, man. Lose your dad and your mom both, and I would assume fairly young.
Yeah. 6 when I lost my mom. My grandpa died when I was 15 in 2010, and then my dad in 2011.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, man. So at that point, then you get the first bus out of town. I'm going, and you went to Parris Island?
Yes, sir.
All right. Tell me about your experience going into Parris Island. Now, you know all about the Marine Corps. You watched Heartbreak Ridge, right? You watch Full Metal Jacket, so you know what's coming.
Yeah. It was just like everybody else's experience, chow time to chow time, day to day. But I had a little bit more knowledge on how to deal with it because I was in my school had a Marine Corps ROTC program.
Oh, nice.
And Dad actually kind of refused to join at first. And my dad, when he was still alive, was like, if you want to be in the Marine Corps, like, might as well learn about the Marine Corps, and kind of forced me in. And I was hesitant, but I joined because, everybody in the high school made fun of the ROTC guys. We called them the ROTC Nazis, and but I joined. And so after my dad died, I had a major that, he was always in my rear end. He was always like, he would catch me with dip and he's like, you're not supposed to have this, you're underage. Or he would hear that I was drinking or cussing. And he's like, Marines don't lie, cheat, steal, drink, or cuss. And of course, later I joined the Marine Corps and I'm like, I don't know what Marine Corps he was in. But
he must have been grown up in a different Marine Corps.
But the sergeant major that was there, he always was like, don't listen to him. I see great things in you. You have, natural leadership ability. But I'd actually, that summer after my dad died, I was on my own basically. My guardianship was my 97-year-old grandmother who I was taking care of.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was kind of on my own. I still had my dad's house. So, I'd put grandma in bed by 8 o'clock and then I'd go back over to my dad's house that had a 3 keg machine and I'd invite all my friends over and burn it down and party. And I ended up, I was just kind of trying to grieve my dad in my own way by distracting myself and partying, and ended up getting in some trouble and ended up getting a DUI and some weapons charges. And that was when that sergeant major really kind of grabbed me by the ear and took me under his wing, And when I tell people he took me under his wing, they're like, oh, that's so loving. No, man spent a lot of time on the drill field and was an 0331 machine gunner and a grunt sergeant major his entire time. So he showed up, he showed up at the jail with my grandmother. And we got back to my grandma's house, and I'm hungover, and I'm like, I'm just wanting to go to bed. And he's like, green on green out front. You've got 5 minutes. Let's go.
Oh, yeah.
And so I kind of got a taste of what punitive exercise was like well before even going to boot camp. So I felt kind of right at home at Paris Island.
So you went from one right to the next. Yeah, that's very nice. So what was it like? You get there, you're getting in the routine of things, trying to figure it out. You get, what is it? Black Friday is what everybody calls it, right? Your drill instructors come out, and having that sergeant major, that iconic sergeant major role, right? Yeah. How did you see your drill instructors as they came out?
It was still a little bit of a shell shock, like it is for everybody, but it was one of those things that I kind of knew from his advice, he always told me, even before my dad died, I told my dad, I was like, I don't think this sergeant major likes me very much. And he's like, I'm like, he yells at me more than anybody else. And my dad had always said, steel sharpens steel,
Right. Yeah.
And so, and once my dad died, I saw that, while he was meaner than hell to me and worse on me than anybody else, it was because he cared. And so I just kind of kept that mentality in my mind. Same thing in boot camp and, just day to day, chow by chow. And I trusted the process,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Now, was there anything that stuck out to you in boot camp, memorable moments or lessons learned or anything like that?
Yeah, I learned to keep my mouth shut.
It's a good lesson.
I've always been that. I've always had some natural intelligence, but at a young age, I didn't know that use that sparingly and when it's needed. I'll always be to be the guy that had the solution or to talk up.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned boot camp is not the place for that.
Yeah.
Have some humility. You don't want to stand out because standing out at Paris Island is very, very bad.
Yeah, it seems to draw attention and
and you
unwanted attention.
You don't want attention there.
That's a good point. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So at this point, did you know what you were going to do before you went in, like what your job was going to be?
I foolishly, no offense to any of my Motor T window licking brethren out there, but I foolishly signed a Motor T contract because they were like, it's a $4,000 bonus and it gets you out of here next week. And I was like, whatever gets me out of here the quickest.
Okay. So Motor T, was that mechanic or driver? Driver. Okay. So your school then was Lejeune or
Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Oh, you had to go to Missouri. Okay. Why did I think Lejeune? Anyways, so you go to Fort Leonard Wood. Now, did you come home after graduation and spend some time there?
Yeah. So I had a week of leave after boot camp, and then had 30 days of Marine combat training at Camp Geiger, and then straight to Missouri from there.
Yeah. And how was MCT? Like, how did you enjoy that?
Actually,
you got to shoot guns. I mean,
yeah, it's basically fourth phase boot camp. I mean,
that happens.
Yeah. The grunts get a little easier because that's their MOS school, so they're there for 60, 90 days. They're there for longer, so they get their phone or weekends, liberty, and all that. For us, it was fourth phase boot camp, but it was fun. Learning the weapon systems and stuff like that.
Okay. All right. So you going to Fort Leonard Wood, what was that like walking, you're going on an Army base now.
Yeah.
There's a Marine detachment there for Motor T, but kind of what was that like?
It was nice. At least it was nice for the first half, having liberty and such. The second half kind of sucked. Some Marines got caught doing things they should not have been doing with one of the female airmen on base. So all Marines were restricted to base, no civilian attire. So mass punishment.
And how long is this school?
Oh God, it's just a few months.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not crazy long. I don't remember exactly. 3 traumatic brain injuries. My memory's terrible.
Yeah, no, I understand.
It was just a couple of months or a few months.
But you learned to drive all the different vehicles. From 7-ton to Humvee.
Humvee, 7-ton, LVSR.
Okay.
Yeah. Worst part about that place was we were there in the wintertime and we got snow, and it was Missouri in the wintertime, and when we got in trouble, they wouldn't let us light the burn barrels. So normally we'd have these burn barrels that we'd light a fire in, and those 55-gallon drums, when they get good and red hot, they radiate heat, and so we could all huddle around it and do what I call penguin formation. But when we got in trouble, they wouldn't let us light the burn barrels. So it was like, and of course, in typical moto fashion, they'd be like, "Oh, you think this is cold? You don't know cold. Remember the frozen chosen?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I get it. I'm sure they had it worse. This still sucks."
Does not change the fact that it still sucks. I agree with that. All right. And then, so you do your school there. You figure out you're going to get orders to where?
Camp Lejeune. I went to Headquarters Battalion, 2nd Marine Division.
No kidding. Okay. Let's hold on a second. What year was that?
That would have been end of 2012, beginning of 2013.
Okay. We might have been there about the same time. That's pretty interesting. Now, what was your day-to-day interactions like? What did you do with Motor T?
So the job of truck company with Headquarters Battalion is to just kind of support the whole division. We run the motor pools, obviously do field op and train, and then as different Victor units throughout the division need bodies, they would pull from us.
I see. Okay.
So I ended up when I first got there, we had Alpha side and Bravo side. And Bravo side had 3 platoons. It was where the company headquarters was. It was where the maintenance shop was. And then Alpha side was this own little satellite motor pool, we'll call it, with other trucks and just 1 platoon. And so we were kind of off. I was with Alpha, and we were kind of in our own motor pool and our own little platoon off to the side. And so, mostly just I ended up getting meritoriously promoted to corporal because we didn't have a staff NCO IC over there.
Wow.
We ended up later getting a lieutenant and a master sergeant, but at the time it was just 2 sergeants, and they were like, I need a line NCO. I need somebody to go and run the motor pool because, they're in there sending up morning reports, doing training orders and all, running the admin side and the platoon sergeant side of things. So they needed somebody to run the operations side of things. And I ended up, volunteering, and we had a few senior lance corporals and corporals that were just kind of counting down days to EAS or whatever. And then I had a sergeant that for some reason just took a liking to me, and I told him I would do it. And at first he was like a bunch of explicit words and was like, "You're a boot, like you're still wet behind the ears." But eventually it just became the running joke that anytime he left the motor pool, he'd be like, "I'll be back in a bit. Culpepper's in charge." And that just became the running joke. And eventually it just kind of stuck that it was like, I'd just show up, get everybody in formation, hey, morning startups, let's get the trucks running. And I kind of just learned quickly how the motor pool ran. And so here I am, like just a couple months into the fleet.
Oh, wow.
And I'm kind of already telling everybody, like, let's get the ball rolling. Like I said, that sergeant major from high school kind of noticed I had that just natural leadership. And so that just became the running joke. And then Sergeant Ski ended up putting me on a corporal's board, and I won that at my 8-month mark, and they actually had to hold my promotion until my 1-year mark because
no kidding,
you have to have minimum 1 year time in service for corporal.
Wow. Yeah. That's incredible, man.
Yeah. And so that was just kind of the day-to-day operations, was just keeping the trucks running, keeping the motor pool running, going on field ops, learning standard motor T SOPs and stuff like that. And then eventually, like Victor units would pull from us and stuff. So we ended up having to stand up a platoon of Marines to go with 1-9 in 2013 because they were deploying to Afghanistan.
Okay.
And they were getting ready for CACs, and they took a platoon of us with them. And it was random assorted Marines pulled from different platoons. So no whole platoon went. So it was me and some of my guys and some guys from first platoon and some guys from second platoon. And then we had this staff sergeant. I had met him as Sergeant Stanton, but he picked up staff sergeant the same month I picked up corporal. But he was actually one. Sergeant Ski, him and Sergeant Ski had deployed together. They were friends. He had just gotten back from deployment. I mean, I think this guy deployed something like 7 or 8 times in his first 10 years in as a sergeant. He outstacked most master sergeants. I have a lot of respect for that man, but he would just deployment hop. He'd get back from deployment, chop to a different unit and deploy. And Sergeant Ski asked him to help me out and help me get ready for the board. And he was like, as he's sitting there going over my uniforms and stuff, and he was like, so how long you been in, Culpepper? And I was like, 8 months, Sergeant. And he was like, no. He's like, I didn't ask you how long you've been a Lance Corporal. He's like, I asked you how long you've been in. And I was like, 8 months, Sergeant. And he just like froze and just shot daggers at us. And he was like, I hate you. You don't know jack about being an NCO. You're what's wrong with the Marine Corps, and walked out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And of course, I ended up winning the board. Well, we stand up this platoon for 1-9, and he ends up being the NCO, the staff NCO IC for this.
Okay.
And over time, he still to this day, I just messaged him this morning. He checked in on me about everything I've got going on right now. But still to this day, we've kept kind of close. But he was like a a father figure in the Marine Corps to me, because I remember my first time ever calling it a 9-line. You know, he's grabbing my Kevlar, slamming my head off the MRAP door, going, "Golden hour! You've got 1 hour from the time they're hit to get them in a bird and get them to an operating table." Like, and he's just screaming at me. So he taught me about everything I knew about being an NCO, and but yeah, so we ended up doing workups with 1-9, and they ended up deploying. We didn't get to go, unfortunately.
Oh, you didn't even go?
Nope.
Oh, wow.
So we helped them with all the workups, and then they deployed without us. But yeah, that was pretty much the day-to-day life of being in Headquarters Battalion Truck Company.
Yeah. Headquarters Battalion, gotta love it. That's basically, in my career, that's basically all I've done was Headquarters Battalion. So, but now, and how long did you spend there total?
I spent, probably 2013 to maybe 2015.
Okay. And but no deployment during that time?
Nope.
Okay. And then now, did you end up re-enlisting, going somewhere else?
No. So I ended up going to. I was supposed to be a armed security guard over at the 2nd MEF, 2nd Marine Division headquarters building, a building on Camp Lejeune called H1. And they sent me over there, and they ended up not having a sergeant of the guard over one of the teams, and I had the most leadership experience as a young NCO. So I ended up taking over one of the security teams for the headquarters building, and did that for I think like 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And then after that, of course, they were sending me back to Headquarters Battalion. Didn't want to do that. Was tired of not deploying. So I dropped a MARSOC package.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then
now that whole process to get into MARSOC is no joke.
Yeah.
It's pretty taxing.
Yeah. So I did the training program. My ASVAB and GT score when I joined was through the roof, so I ended up not having to retake it. I passed the Naval Special Warfare physical and all of that, and I met the physical fitness requirements to go. Continued to train for about 6 to 8 months. And then I was supposed to be in the January class of 15. I was in the January class of 15, I believe. And then about 3 weeks before I was supposed to go, one of my Marines, Strode, he was getting out of the Marine Corps the next day, and didn't have a ride, had already sold or shipped off his car or whatever. He was at a buddy's house. Just wondering if he could stay at my house. So I went and picked him up, was driving him back towards base when there was a fatal accident up ahead. And so they had the highway shut down. And traffic was blocked at a standstill. And so I pulled up, threw my hazards on, and some old man texting and driving.
Oh, no kidding.
Didn't even try to slow down. It's a 55-mile-an-hour highway, so he could have been doing anywhere from 55 to 70. Was just texting, driving, didn't see me, slammed right into the rear end of me.
Whoa.
And so it jacked my back up pretty good, gave me a traumatic brain injury. Of course, I didn't know that at the time because I was stubborn and refused medical treatment, and still wanted to go through selection. I didn't want this to screw up my dreams. But I was hurting. I was taking something like 2,800 to 3,200 milligrams of ibuprofen a day.
No kidding.
And ended up going to selection.
That's a lot of medication, man.
Yeah. And I pushed through the pain. Did the initial PFT, the initial swim qual, and ruck run. And then, of course, they started weeding people out immediately. And my PFT score with all the pain, it was still a first class PFT, but it was just too low. And so I was one of the ones that got cut that failed to meet the standard. And so then I got sent back to my unit. Was like, okay, well, they told me, like, hey, put in another package. You can come back in the August class, get better, train more. So I was like, all right, I need to keep training. I need to take this medical thing seriously. So I went to the battalion aid station. They got me physical therapy for my knees and my back. And then they sent me to the TBI clinic. Or they sent me to the TBI clinic sent me to the TBI clinic. TBI clinic sent me to get an MRI. And they uncovered that I had hydrocephalus, which is where the ventricles in the center of my brain that produce cerebrospinal fluid aren't draining properly, so they swell and build pressure.
Wow.
And they said, you're going to need surgery. And so I was then referred to Wounded Warriors Battalion and proceeded to undergo 4 brain surgeries.
4 brain surgeries?
Yeah, so the first one, so normally how they treat hydrocephalus is they put a shunt in, which has a pressure valve and releases the fluid. But I wanted to stay in, and you can't stay in with a shunt. So they have an alternative surgery called an EVT. It's endoscopic third ventriculostomy, but basically they go in, they poke a hole in the center of your third ventricle, put a balloon in it, inflate it, stretch the hole out real big, and try to make a natural drain for your ventricle. Well, they did that, and unfortunately my body did what it's supposed to do, which is, hey, there's a hole here and it's not supposed to be, scar tissue over. So they went in and tried it a second time, this time making the hole a little bigger. Same thing, scarred back over. Pressure remained. And so they went in and they were like, this time we've got to do a shunt. And they went in and they put a shunt in and sent me home on convalescent leave. That 30 days of convalescent leave was the worst pain I've ever been in my life, because I could not sit or stand for more than 15 seconds without being in the most excruciating head pain in my life.
No kidding.
Like your average migraine, debilitating migraine, where you're light sensitive and sound sensitive, doesn't hold a candle to this. It literally felt like my brain was going to implode. And so I went back. I went back after the 30 days. Well, first I went to the VA in my hometown. They did an MRI, said, you look fine, gave me some pain pills and sent me home. Pain pills didn't even touch the pain. So I pretty much just had to stay horizontal that whole 30 days. And then when I went back to see my neurosurgeon in Portsmouth, Virginia, he was like, your ventricles look like they might collapse. You're actually draining too much fluid. The pressure on this valve is too low. So they had to go in. They scheduled me for an emergency surgery, and then they put for the fourth one, they put an adjustable valve in. So I call it my little adjustable turbo blow-off valve. And I can put a little magnet on my head and adjust the setting.
Nice. Yeah. Wow, that is insane. Now, when you were, you said you had 4 surgeries, and then the last one being the what'd you call it? The adjustable. That's it. Yeah. Now, when you were saying you had head pain, was it like constant the whole time? Like no. The only time I got any relief was when I was laying down, because gravity, there was no longer that fluid draining. So, when I laid down, it allowed the fluid to stay up there. But anytime I would sit or stand, it was instant excruciating pain, because all that fluid was draining and it was creating a vacuum on the ventricles in the center of my brain. And so it was just instant pain and would not let up until I laid down. That is insane. Wow. Now, how soon did it, like, I'm assuming that once you got that last surgery, it helped tremendously, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it did.
Now, was it like almost instant relief type of deal?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So as soon as I came, I obviously didn't know at first, because after I came out of surgery, I'm still on a gurney and still laying down.
Right.
But the first time I sat up and walked around, I was like, oh my God, I can actually stand and walk and not have a even so much as a headache, much less a debilitating migraine.
Wow. Okay, and then at this point, you're still with Wounded Warrior?
Wounded Warriors. Yeah. So at that point, I kind of asked, I was like, so what now? And they're like, well, I mean, you're still physically fit, you can stay in. I'm like, well, what's the but? Because I feel like there's a but coming.
Yeah.
They're like, well, because of the shunt, you're non-deployable. And I'd been in 6 years at this point. So I was like, that's career suicide. I'm non-deployable. Like, I'm not going to be as competitive for promotion. Plus, it's just my opinion. No offense to anybody else, but being a Marine that can't deploy is like being a mechanic that's not allowed to work in a garage.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense, you know?
So at that point, then you did you go up like medical retirement board?
Med board.
Okay.
And then I originally went up on a med board. They rated me at 30/90, and I was going to get medically retired. But there was some discrepancies in some of my paperwork. And so I requested an appeal, because I was like, hey, these things are wrong. And so
this is all while you're on active duty. Still. Yeah.
And so then they were like, oh yeah, we did miss that. Did some changes. And then the med board itself disagreed that my depression, TBI, and hydrocephalus should all be rated together. And the VA argued, well, we have to rate them all together because we don't know which symptoms come from which diagnosis. So we just have to lump them together. And
that seems weird.
Yeah. Because see, when you're on a med board, you have two ratings, your DOD rating and then your VA rating. Your VA rating's for everything that's wrong with you. Your DOD rating is only for what you're getting put out for.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And so the VA, the DOD is like, he's only getting put out for, the hydrocephalus, but you have the TBI and the depression lumped in here. And they're like, yeah, well, we can't separate it. And so they were like, well, if you had to rate it for just the hydrocephalus, what would it be? And they were like, well, 10%, because we don't know which symptoms go. And so then the DOD was like, that's what we're giving them, and separated me instead of retiring me.
What?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. So they just separated you, sent you on your way. And now, did you, what happened with the other side? Like, did you get 100%
the
disability?
VA. So the VA, like I said, I was originally 90%, but they said that they were looking through my records, and they said I failed to mention that I had some ataxia or like dizziness, some coordination issues with my TBI. So they added that in there, and that bumped me up to 100%, which was really great. I mean, I know there's horror stories about the VA, but I never claimed anything. I didn't feel right claiming anything, because I mean, I never deployed. I was planning on going to MARSOC, and next thing I know, I've got a shunt in my brain, and it's like, hey, you're having to get out. And so I didn't want to claim anything. And so the VA rep at Wounded Warriors that helped me was just kind of like, all right, we're going to go through your medical records and just see. And, started writing down every time I'd went to medical. And next thing I know, I ended up at 100%. So they took really good care of me. But I did end up having a nonprofit that had heard what had happened reach out. They're like pro bono attorneys for veterans. And they actually helped me just 2 years ago, helped me kind of sue the med board in federal court and have my records changed. And I won in federal court. And so I got moved from the separated to the retired list.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's still at the 10% or whatever?
No, it got moved to
it
got moved to the 30%, and
awesome.
I was placed on the retired list. Bad part about that is they were like, hey, so like if you get a severance check, but you get a disability rating, you have to pay the severance check back.
Oh,
well,
that's nice.
I had already been paying it back. They were just taking a couple $100 out of my VA check every month.
Right.
Well, when I sued and won in federal court and got moved to the retired list, DFAS said, that's our debt now. He's on the retired list and we take care of retirement pay. So we're going to collect on this. And then started sending me letters saying I owed them $28,000, which I had no idea any of this was going on because I'm thinking it's still being taken out of my VA check every month. And then all of a sudden I start getting a letter of garnishment from the U.S. Treasury, and they're showing up at my work, going to garnish my paycheck from my job.
What?
And yeah, luckily I had some money saved up, and it ended up just writing them a check for the $28,000 and said, here you go, get out of my hair. I hope I never have to see you again.
Wow. So you literally forked over $28,000 right there.
Yeah, just to pay him back and get him out of my hair.
Yeah. And you were back home at that point?
Yeah.
Holy cow. And when you went back home, like what were you doing like for work, those types of things?
Initially I just tried to live the retired life at first.
Yeah.
That's when I realized I finally understood why men who retire young die young, because we need something to do.
Yeah.
And it's very boring. You get bored and isolated, and you know, you can find hobbies to entertain yourself, but what do hobbies take? Money. Now I'm eating through my retirement check. And so I ended up going to work for my local sheriff's department for a little while, but they paid like $11.43 an hour to work in the jail.
Dang.
It's a very small town department, and there was a lot of drama, and somehow the trustee inmates knew more about everything going on than I did.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a very weird thing. And then so I got tired of the drama. I ended up putting in my 2 weeks, and then later on down the road, I applied to be a reserve deputy, and one of the lieutenants up there was like, no, didn't we fire you for talking to the trustees? And I was like, what are you talking about? The trustees knew more than I did. Like, and also here's a copy of the two-week notice I emailed you. But yeah, so that the small town department drama wasn't for me. So I ended up working armed security for Section 8 housing in a place called Antioch. It's one of the suburbs of Nashville. And then one of my buddies that had worked with me at the sheriff's department, he was a deputy, started working for this company called Nearest Green Distillery. He was working night shift security out there, and they were trying to hire him a partner on his shift because we like to, at least we don't ever want anybody working by themselves.
Right.
And so, you know, they were trying to hire him a partner, and I was like, oh, well, that'll be a fun little gig to pass the time and make some money, and I get to hang out with my buddy. And so I worked that. I went over there about 2.5 years ago. It was November of 22, and worked with him on night shift for a little while. And then I ended up getting moved to day shift. And then our boss was trying to figure out how to track, you know, show what all our security department actually does, that we check on vehicles, check who's coming in and going, that we do tours every hour, you know, or every couple hours, that we check all the doors, that we open and close, lock and unlock gates, or we check on the coolers, or, you know, what all we actually do as a security department. And his bright idea was to do a Microsoft Word or a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet check. And I'm like, hey man, like, what's to stop me from just coming in at the beginning of my shift after everybody leaves and just initialing that I did all the tours and sitting here all night, you know? And I was like, why don't you use SilverTrack? And he's like, what's SilverTrack? And I'm like, it's this program. It's designed for security companies. And so you can get these little QR codes and you put them here, and you have to scan the QR code at each checkpoint. And then you have to take a picture of the surrounding area, showing everything's in good order, and you can't upload a photo. You have to take it in app, and it's timestamped. And he was like, that's interesting. So I showed him the program, and he was like, this is exactly what we need. He's like, how do you know this? And I told him, I used to manage, I was an operations manager for that previous security company I worked for, and that I had to manage like 30 sites and, like 100 officers, and I couldn't be in 30 places at once. So this is what I used. And then he ended up promoting me to a management position there. And then I took over security for the bar that we had on the distillery grounds called the Humble Baron, which is actually the Guinness Book of World Records world longest bar.
No kidding.
518 feet and 202 bar stools.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it inside or outside?
Inside.
Inside?
Yeah.
No kidding. Wow.
Shelbyville, Tennessee.
I'm going to have to go check that out sometime.
Yeah. Yeah. And I worked there up until 2 weeks ago. Okay.
Wow. And now here we are.
Now here we are.
Yeah, having a good time.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Man, that's a very unique story. It sucks that you got hit by some old dude texting. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
But thank goodness they were able to, fix your brain and get that going the right way. So bonus there,
Well, if it hadn't happened, I'd have never been at Wounded Warriors. If I'd never been at Wounded Warriors, I'd have never met Lee. And if I'd never met Lee, I wouldn't be here with you right now. So.
That's a good point. Yeah. Well, I like it then. Well, not, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
So, as we approach kind of the end of the podcast and stuff, I do these rapid fire questions at the end. So would you like to do some rapid fire questions?
Sure, hit me.
All right. Let me flip to my page so I can read them because I don't have them memorized. All right. What is your proudest military moment?
Just being able to train my Marines and be there for them. Nothing made me feel prouder than, getting that phone call in the middle of the night, being the guy that somebody just needs to talk to, or somebody just needs help. Knowing that my Marines actually trusted me. That I wasn't just that dickhead at work that yelled at them. They trusted me to come to me with their problems.
Yeah, that's a compliment. Yeah, absolutely. What was your most embarrassing military moment?
Having to go back to Wounded Warriors after getting dropped from selection.
Oh yeah.
Really feeling like a failure after that.
Right. All right. If you could be one military leader for a day, who would that be?
Oh God, that's a hard one. Man, you really stumped me with that one.
And you're welcome.
You
want to do a pass, come back to it?
George Washington crossing the Delaware on Christmas.
That would be pretty cool. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. What was, what had to have been going through his mind?
Yeah.
Crossing the Delaware. That's
on Christmas.
That's insane.
That doesn't just scream American. I don't know what does. Like, we will kill you in your sleep on Christmas. We've done it.
I love it. All right. If you could change one rule in the military, what would it be?
One rule. Probably would have been the tattoo policy in the early 2000 teens.
Yeah.
As the war was slowing down and we were getting into more of a garrison standing position, standby positioning, we lost a lot of. This is just my opinion, for what it's worth, but there was a lot of great leadership and a lot of experience that got pushed out by the tattoo policies at the time.
Yeah, that's a good point. There was a lot of people that got pushed out because of that. What is one skill or lesson you learned while you were in that you still use today?
Servant leadership.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was good.
that.
All right, this is a tough one. In the zombie apocalypse, what would be your weapon of choice, and what anthem would be playing in the background?
Probably my 300 blackout, just because that's what I've got the most trigger time on now.
Okay.
And it's quiet, so I'm not going to, shooting
Yeah.
them 220 grain subsonics. I'm not going to attract every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the surrounding area. And then probably, what is the name of it? It's like Flight of the Valkyries, I think it is, from Apocalypse
that's
Now.
a great tune. Yeah, I like that.
I just always have flashbacks to that in my movie. Charlie, don't serve. If I say it's safe to surf this beach, it's safe to surf this beach. I always got quotes from that because one of my little pieces of joy that poured into my glass, if you will, when life was rough, was I had a 1963 Willys Jeep, Vietnam Era Willys Jeep,
yes.
and I was actually going to repaint it because it was painted OD green, and it had U.S. Army on the side, and of course I was going to paint it.
Right, yeah.
I was going to take the white U.S. Army on it and paint it the old yellow USMC numbers, but it had Mac V Mat 95 on it, and I asked the guy I bought it off of, I was like, what's Mac V Mat 95? And he was like, Marine Corps Advisory Vietnam, Marine Corps Advisory Team 95, or Military Advisory Command Vietnam, Military Advisory Team 95. And I was like, oh, well, why is that on there? And he was like, that's the unit I was in, and took me inside and actually showed me his Silver Star.
No kidding.
Being in Mac V in Vietnam. And after he told me that story, I was like,
no, you can't.
I'm not touching the paint. Like I tell his story all the time, and I would still send him pictures and stuff. But
you still have it?
No, I actually just sold it a couple of years ago because I needed a freaking mower, and life got hard and kids and everything else, and it was just sitting there rusting. And there was a collector that wanted it, and I ended up selling it. But when I was in the Marine Corps, man, I redid all the brake lines, and they're the steel brake lines. I'm having to cut and do the flare, and then you got to get the perfect flare on it so it doesn't leak. But then sometimes I'd cut it and I'd flare it and it's not right, so I'd re-flare it, and I'd finally get the perfect flare, and I'm like, crap, I didn't put the nut on it.
Oh,
you just got to put the nut on and then flare it. But I redid everything on that Jeep, and Marines love.
So you had it while you were in?
Oh yeah, and that was one of the things. Like the gate guards would always be like, "Where's your seatbelt at?" I'm like, "Didn't come with seatbelts," and they're like, "You have to have seatbelts on base." I'm like, "Not if it's older than 76. Look at the base." Like I had the base order printed out and in my little blouse pocket because every time I would drive through a different gate or a different gate guard, they would ask, and I just.
You should have one laminated and just like, here you go.
But one of my friends that worked in the armory, they had some old Vietnam era like OG flak jackets.
Yeah.
Just solid OD green with this weird misshapen plate up front and these little Velcro straps that they were just getting rid of to make space. And so he gave me a couple of them. So I threw them in the Jeep. So I tell people every time they rode around with me, they'd have to ride there. And, we'd get all the Apocalypse Now quotes and everything else.
That is so cool, man. I always wanted a Willys Jeep. Yeah. They're freaking awesome. How was it driving it? Was it all right?
I mean, it was all right you could get to 55 if you were going downhill with a tailwind.
Okay.
But mostly it was because it was only a 3-speed, and it was
probably 45 max.
Third gear screaming. It was at 45, but it was geared so low that if I put that thing in 4-wheel drive, I could literally crawl up a wall with it.
Oh wow.
And so we used to hypothetically, allegedly, people say I might have once took it on some of the tank trails on Camp Lejeune.
I have heard stories of individuals doing that and getting stuck and having to get pulled out.
PMO does not like it very much.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Never got stuck though.
All right. What animal best describes your time in service?
Man, you have hard questions.
Sorry. I don't know. Makes you think, though.
It does. I don't know. I guess just a German Shepherd or a Belgian Malinois.
Okay.
Just loyal, hardworking, and wanting to serve others.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. All right. Which branch of the military has the sexiest uniforms?
Marine Corps.
Okay. I was just checking. And which branch of the service is the best?
Is the best?
Yeah.
It depends on your version of the best. I mean, I like the Marine Corps because we're the hard chargers and the fighters. But if I had to do it all over again, I would have gone to Colorado Springs, Colorado, gone into the Air Force Academy and joined the Air Force as an officer, because that's going to be your best quality of life that's there.
That's a good point. Yeah. That's no joke.
I've got my partner that worked with me at the distillery, the other security manager. She's a reservist in the Air Force, but she goes active duty orders all the time. And she was active duty, deployed to Afghanistan and all of that. But there was 3 months that I was doing double duty, her job and my job, kind of covering both with my main boss, Shannon, because she deployed to Guam. And the whole time she might have flew like 4 missions refueling aircraft, but most of her deployment was her sitting on a beach smoking cigars and staying in a 4-star Hilton hotel.
Oh,
and I'm like,
geez.
you can't classify that as a deployment. Like, that's a vacation.
Hey, if I were given the opportunity to go on a deployment like that, I would take it.
Yeah. That's why I said if I had to do it all over again, Colorado Springs, Colorado, here I come. Be an Air Force officer. My deployment will consist of smoking cigars on the beach.
What a rough one. What a rough life, right? Oh, man. All right. Knowing what you know now, would you do it all over again?
Absolutely.
Okay. I like it. Well, this is your opportunity. Words of wisdom, something you want to leave the listeners with, anything like that.
Just don't be scared to reach out for help. Always check your ego. Stay humble. We didn't really talk about it here, but I've always been an intelligent individual. I've always had my ducks in a row. I've always been the one people come to for advice and lean on and solve problems. And over the last year, culminating in a very major screw up a couple of weeks ago, I threw away a lot of what I've had in life, and it was because I didn't know how to ask for help, and I didn't know how to humble myself, and don't be scared to reach out for help, and don't be shameful, because just in my time here at A Hero, when I first came here, I was very hard on myself and very full of shame and almost self-destructing, and everybody here has shown me so much grace and so much pride and restored my confidence. And people that don't even really know me in the first couple of minutes talking to me are like, hey, we can tell you are a very intelligent, very articulate individual that's just fallen on some hard times, and you have the ability to regrow. So if I had any advice, it's don't be too prideful to reach out for help, because there's good people out there willing to help.
Yeah, it's good advice, man. Yeah, I like it. Well, shoot, at the end here, I always talk about veteran suicide, and I go into that, and I'm going to do the same thing here. But to all the listeners out there, if you're struggling, you need help, anything like that, don't forget that the VA does have some great resources. You can always dial 988, press option 1. You can always text 838-255, or you can go to veteranscrisisline.net and click on that chat icon. Any of those options will put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. But remember, one veteran life loss is one too many. I care about you. I know he cares about you. The whole veteran community cares about you. So please reach out for help. If you're out there, you're not struggling, reach out to the buddies you serve with. Ask them how they're doing. If they need that helping hand, please give it to them. All right, man. One last time, thanks. Truly appreciate it. To all the listeners out there, stay motivated. Change your socks.